Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to Neighbors Helping Neighbors. This is a function of the Robertson County Democratic Party. We're happy to welcome you today. We feel it's very important right now that we do these podcasts. We live in a supermajority Republican-controlled state. Our representatives at the federal and state level have and will not hold public town halls to allow us to express our concerns and opinions. So how are we supposed to let them know what we want them to hear? So this is a grassroots effort, both in our state and nationwide, to give people an opportunity to express their voice and to hear how current policies are affecting them. We also want to give new voices an area that they can speak and share their visions for the future. We want you, the people, to understand your options when they go to the polls and how their choices impact people. On the near track, our goal is to highlight as many of our candidates for the 7th Congressional Seat District in Tennessee. Our previous representative, Mark Green, resigned in recent months, leaving a vacancy and an open seat. Some of our Democratic candidates have been announcing their intentions to run for that seat. So our near-term goal is to host those candidates on our podcast. Here are important dates coming up that you want to remember. The primary for this 7th district seat will be on October 7th. The general or special election is going to occur on December 7th. Robertson County Democrats are hosting a candidate town hall this coming week on Wednesday, September the 10th at 6:30 at Innovation Academy in Springfield. We invite all to come and listen to the candidates speak. There will be a moderated question and answer session afterwards as well. So today we're hosting one of those candidates, Mr. Darden Copeland. Darden is a businessman and owner of a public relations firm. So we're happy to have Darden.
Thank you.
We understand that you're fed up.
I am fed up, and that's sort of how I got into this race. I'm sort of frustrated with what the political climate looks like at the federal level and even the state level. But politicians sometimes are more interested in fighting each other than they are fighting for what's right for their constituents and the American people. And so I wanted to get into this race because I'm also sort of tired of losing battles here in Tennessee. And that's something that I'm just sort of tired of. And that's why I decided to get in. I watched Trump's, big, beautiful bill, as he calls it, pass the House by one single solitary vote, 215 to 214. When the House kicked it over to the Senate, they said, okay, we're good with all these cuts, help out the billionaires and, nothing for anybody else. And one vote decided that election or that particular piece of legislation. And then the NPR cuts and public broadcasting and some of the foreign aid that Congress had appropriated, when that passed through the House, it passed 214 to 212. And I'm frustrated with the Republicans, but, in that vote, there were 4 Democrats that didn't show up to vote that day. So I'm sort of fed up with just all of politics as usual. And that's why I decided to get in. We have elected officials on both sides of the aisle. And I think if we want to sort of change the tone in Washington, we need to change who we send to Washington. And so I'm decided to put myself out there and try and do something about it. I can complain and doom scroll and be paralyzed by it, or I can actually sort of jump in and do something about it. So that's what
Sounds like you're a fresh voice for us. Tell us a little bit about your past history and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I grew up in rural Virginia, in Culpeper County, Virginia, son of, working class parents. My mom worked in a factory on the overnight shift so that she could not only put food on our table, but, put dinner on the table, go to work, and then be back in the morning to, feed us breakfast. And my father had a commercial laundry business, high school educated, but as many small businesses do, it did not, ultimately was not successful. And my family we were the beneficiaries of safety nets in several forms in that time that helped us and sort of, was able to get me off to school and I tripled down on my student loans. My sister, saw that, and she said, I'm not doing that. I'm going to join the Air Force so I can have my education paid for at Chapel Hill. And my little brother joined a labor union in town so that he could have a steady job at the local grocery. And he's still in that same industry today because of that foundation he had. So, our family, we had these great safety nets that sort of picked us up when we needed it. And that's been great. But too many people don't have that. When I got out of school, I wanted to work for politicians and get the party elected that built those safety nets, that protect those safety nets, that repair those safety nets when they're broken. And so when I wanted to get into campaigns and sort of running, people's campaigns for office, I went to work for Democrats, and I went to work for, one of the best working class Democrats there ever was, which is Dick Gephardt. I worked for him in 1998. I'd done another campaign before that, but got into campaigns, and I thought the way to make change in this world is for me to go get these good folks elected to office. And so I signed up and I worked diligently on campaigns from 97 until 2004. At that point, we reelected George W. Bush, second term. I worked for Kerry and Edwards, and I remember waking up the next day and I thought, oh my gosh, how much worse can it get? And today we have our answer on how much worse it can get. So I stepped away. I was sort of, burned out on campaigns and politics. And so I stepped back and I built a company. I built a public affairs practice where we go out every day and I use my skill set in campaigns to build coalitions to achieve sort of tangible results in rural communities and communities all across the country. We help build solar facilities. We've permitted and helped permit over 10 gigawatts of power, of renewable energy power. That's enough, that 10 gigawatts that we've permitted, that's enough to power every single household in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama combined. Right. And that's how you get results. We just went into these communities, and I've got to build a coalition of a Trump supporter who lives on the other side of the solar farm and a little old lady driving a Prius who believes in climate change. I've got to get them into a room together and talk about how this project can benefit the entire community and sort of both sides of the aisle. So it's sort of nonpartisan in a D versus R way, but they're still sort of intensely political. We've helped build hospitals, and we've paved roads, and we've put grocery stores and food deserts, and we've built affordable housing and senior housing and memory care facilities. Everybody says they're for these things, but they don't necessarily want it in their backyard. So we come in and we sort of help communities navigate that process. And if it works in those communities, then we help build it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. So the reason you decided to get into this race at this time was this is an open seat and a good opportunity for you with your skill set.
Well, it's not so much an opportunity. I mean, I have no interest in sort of furthering myself. I think I have just enough ego to think that I can do this job and serve the people well, but it was never really about me. And I think that it was sort of, and I don't want to say that I was sort of called to do it, but this is one of those instances where my gut, my heart, and my head all said, you have to do this right now. And I think that everything that I've done in my life has prepared me well to be able to serve at this moment in time. And I don't want to be a creature of Washington. I don't want to be there forever. But with what's going on in Washington, this sort of lack of checks and balances, we have a president who has complete control over the Congress, complete control over the judiciary, frankly, and his administration and the executive branch is just amok. We have to have somebody that can go up there. And if we get one vote closer to parity and checks and balances, if I do nothing else than serve this year and hold them more accountable and have to negotiate better concessions on things like big bad bills or future rescissions that they're trying to pass through Congress and pull our money from us, then I've done my job. And I don't see a Democrat that's in the race currently, or frankly, a Republican that can go up to Washington and be a consensus builder like I believe that I can. So that's why I got in.
So why do you think you would be a better choice than the other candidates that are in the race?
Well, I think, for the Democrats that are running, they're all great people. We need their voices in the legislature. We need them in the Democratic Party. I don't know that, their brand of politics works in all 14 of the counties that comprise this district. So I think that's a challenge. I think that Republicans sort of prey on fear, and they're going to try and demonize and sort of attack some of the other candidates for various reasons. And I think sometimes Republicans come out and vote as much against something as they do for something. So I think that I'm the right candidate in that regard. I think our state legislature is really dysfunctional right now. And that's, I'm laying blame sort of at everybody up there. I hate to do it that way, but we have elected officials from both sides running, and I think it's sort of dysfunctional and it's broken. And this idea that we take somebody from this broken system here and send them up to Washington and the broken system up there with the idea that they're going to change anything, I don't buy it. I think if we want to change the tone in Washington, we need to change who we send up there. And I think I can be that voice. I'm a consensus builder by my nature. I'm not afraid of a fight. It's just not my default setting.
Well, it sounds like you've had plenty of experience avoiding fights and getting consensus where you've worked, and you've built consensus among those. Are there any hot button issues that you think we need to be discussing in Congress right now?
Gosh,
There's too many to talk about.
it's really, I mean, it's sort of a little bit of a where do you start? And, you know, you can watch the news every day and there's something new to be upset about. I think RFK right now is, you know, completely gutting our vaccine system and wants to sort of defederalize it and send it down to states. And you look at what DeSantis is doing in Florida, that, well, we're just going to eliminate the vaccine program in the state. I mean, that's a crime. You know, I worry about my 6-year-old and 9-year-old going to school and, you know, having to go through bad guy drills, and I want to make sure that they're safe from gun violence. But now I've got to worry about the kids sitting next to them that might be unvaccinated. I mean, it's one more thing to worry about when I lay my head down on my pillow at night. I do think healthcare is a major issue. I think that Trump has completely, you know, overplayed the cuts that they're going to put into Medicaid. I think that we're closing hospitals across Tennessee. We're closing senior facilities. I mean, the reverberation of that, the impacts of that are going to be felt sort of system-wide, not just for the folks that need that care, but the healthcare providers and the entire ecosystem. And, you know, when somebody loses their healthcare, you know, they could potentially lose a job, and then they could, you know, it impacts kids' education. It has an effect far beyond the individual care. So 300,000, I think, is the estimate of Tennesseans that will lose their coverage across the state. And that's, you know, that's really tough. And it's so bad, and the Republicans know that it doesn't go into effect until after the midterms in 2026. And I think when you explain that to people, whether you're Democrat or Republican, I think most people agree that's not a good thing. And I'm all for eliminating fraud and waste and abuse. Fine. Those are talking points from the right as an excuse to sort of calculate their cruelty on how to kick people off. And it's, you know, disproportionately going to impact, you know, seniors, folks with disabilities, be it intellectual or physical. And so it's just flat out cruel is what I think this administration, it comes down to. And, you know, all in the name of tax breaks for billionaires. And we're going to add $3 or $4 trillion to the national debt. I mean, it's unconscionable.
I agree with you. You know, one of the problems in this county is we have a large Medicaid population.
Mm-hmm.
So many people here are going to lose complete access to their medical care when this thing passes.
Absolutely.
And, you know, they've kicked the ball down the road to 2026.
Right.
So it's not going to happen until after the midterms, which,
right.
you know, you can read the writing on the wall why they did that.
Right.
So that's not a good thing. What current policies in particular do we need to change at the national level? Anything from foreign policy to immigration to healthcare for all people?
Yes. I mean, I think when you ask people, are you for healthcare for all? I think most people agree. I mean, when you say it's Bernie Sanders' plan, then some people say, oh, I'm not sure if I'm like that. But when you explain what the policies are, and I think Democrats are sort of, you know, our brand is in a little bit of trouble. And I think if you get into the policy and you can explain it to people, they're for it. And then when you tell them it's a Democratic idea, like, oh, I mean, you know, yeah, might be a little more concerned. But and that's where I think I can go into communities and sort of in plain terms explain what these policies are. I think immigration, you know, it's heartbreaking to watch separate families and their kids from brothers and sisters, and then we're sending people back to countries that they're not even from. We have to have a fair system to allow people into this country. We have to have an easier system for folks to get into this country. We have to protect the dreamers and the kids that are coming here, or the kids that are born here. You know, there's no reason for that. And again, it's part of this administration's sort of calculated cruelty of, you know, discriminating against folks. And they're sort of, you know, it's the Silicon Valley approach of let's move fast and break things. Let's move fast and let's, you know, deport as many folks as you can, and let's set quotas, which we don't need quotas in that regard. And now they're walking it back because they realize that, wait a minute, oh, we're losing some of our workforce. We're losing some of the folks that perform this essential task and that essential task. And so it's just a really haphazard way. I'm not sure that Trump is really concerned with governing. I think he's worried about enriching himself and the billionaires, and he's become a bully. He's abdicated some of these responsibilities to, you know, real xenophobic folks like Stephen Miller and others. And if we don't have a system of check and balances up there in Washington, this is going to get worse. I mean, we're 7 or 8 months in. and we've got 3 more years potentially. So
Yeah, I agree. I think the system of checks and balances is destroyed right now. There's no checks on it.
that's right.
And of course, uh, everything is appealed and goes to Supreme Court. And, you know, that's no longer, even a fair fight. But so that's a big problem. Uh, what concerns rural communities a lot is agriculture. How do you think agriculture is going to be impacted by the Trump tariff?
The tariffs. Yeah, no, I mean, I saw the article recently, John Deere and sort of what's happening to their, uh, you know, their company and they're taking a hit. They're losing $300 million because of the tariffs. I mean, 75% of those tractors are built here and products from here, but there's 25% that come from abroad. And you look at what's happening to them, they're really getting hit hard. Farmers are getting hit hard. The valuation on soybeans right now is fluctuating, 50% at a time up and down, predominantly down. So, we've got farmers that aren't going to be able to make their ends meet and they're not going to go buy that new tractor anymore. And, John Deere has to raise their prices on it. So we're going to be using, old equipment, used equipment. We're not getting the same returns on, our crops that we used to because of these sort of, ad hoc, tariffs. And I'm not against all tariffs. There are probably some tariffs where we might need to increase it here or there on certain countries, but we're increasing tariffs on, our trade partners and our, the folks that promote democracy, and it shouldn't be used that way. So, I think that that's a real problem right now in this rural community. I think, I also think about what happened in Cheatham County with TVA. They're trying to put that gas plant in the middle of Cheatham County. That impacts the entire ecosystem there too. And my hope, one of my hopes would be that, TVA could get a little more conscientious on solar development. We've worked on solar projects all across the country. And I think the TVA marketplace, there's still a dependency on coal, on gas, on hydro. And I love that TVA can keep our prices down and our utility prices down for our co-ops and for our customers. But I think that we need to add, and I'm sort of an all of the above approach. We need to add more meaningful solar development into the mix because there's a way for farmers who, if they're worried about soybean prices, today or next year or 10 years from now, there's a way that you can do solar development on some of this farmland, diversify your portfolio, have a higher return on solar panels if you were to put them on your property, and preserve your property in farmland in perpetuity so that, you don't have to turn around and sell a portion of your farm and develop tract housing. If you have a generation that doesn't want to farm, it's going to skip a generation, but you want to keep the farm in the family. There's another alternative out there, which will be solar if TVA would sort of loosen their grip a little bit. They're doing some great things on small starts, but I think they need to we need to have some more meaningful discussion around utility scale development in the state. We have these data centers and everything else. If we want to have power generation that keeps the prices down for everybody, we have to add solar into the mix. And I think that's one way that both protects, the climate. I think that protects jobs. I think that protects the family farm. And I think it also keeps our utility rates low. So I think that's a way that, we can solve some of those problems at once.
That's interesting that you're talking about TVA and solar power. The Trump administration, of course, is trying to repress all renewable energy.
Yes.
And non hydrocarbon energy.
Right.
So they're eliminating a lot of programs that are related to solar energy.
Yes.
So how are you going to get TVA interested in solar power than if the administration is pushing back on all?
It's a great question. I mean, you need to do both. I mean, I think that, one, Trump is nominating some real, winners to the TVA board. I think Lee Beaman is nominated to the TVA board. This is somebody that's not fit for public office or to sit on TVA's board, knows nothing about, energy. And so I think it's a purely political appointment. TVA at one point, their board didn't have enough for a quorum. And so we've got Trump loading up his folks that are purely political. There's talk of him privatizing the entire thing. That's going to, if it privatizes, our rates are definitely going to go up. And there'll be another corporation in here. It'll be a friend of Trump that takes over. And then we have no say in it whatsoever. TVA is still quasi-governmental. So as a member of Congress, I think that I could have some influence in what TVA does. I'd sit down with them and have a conversation. And I think, I don't think it's an adversarial position. I think there's a way to do both. And I think that's sort of my approach. So I think that's part of it. The solar sort of incentives and the programming that's out there, a lot of that was completely eliminated and gutted by the big beautiful bill, as Trump calls it. I'm I'm all for incentives when you need to get an industry up and off the ground. And that it's just that it's to incentivize, it's to start something. And I think that the government did a very good job of that with the solar industry. We've brought the manufacturing of solar panels back to domestically. We're building these solar panels in the United States right now. Everybody says, "Oh, you build these things in China." No, we're building them in in the United States. We have solar manufacturers in Sumner County and residents in this district that are working on components for solar facilities at this moment. They're getting laid off because of what just happened at the big bad bill. But we have members in this district, in this community, that are working on solar, that they're shipping the products outside of our district because TVA doesn't do it. I'm all for incentives that are there to sort of jumpstart an industry, and you phase down off of that. Now, we haven't phased down off of that for oil and gas, and we still give all those incentives to fossil fuels that we've given them since the 50s or before. But I think what Trump did was he completely pulled the rug out from underneath of the solar industry with no warning. He said, if you have a solar project and it's going to be completed in the next 60 days, you're okay. Otherwise, you're done. And you know, these solar projects, they go on for 6, 7, 8, 9 years where you have to get an interconnection agreement and you have to have land control. And there's so much engineering and planning. And these companies are out millions and millions of dollars getting ready and progressing. And they have clear line of sight to the finish line of energy production at, you know, a low cost, and Trump pulled it out from underneath of them. And that is wrong. That's where I have an issue. And that, you know, we watch that. I've got clients that, that are building solar facilities, and, you know, they're laying people off right away. I've got friends looking for work because when that bill passed, everybody went on hold and for putting people out of business. It's not the American way.
Interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. But it's good to hear those facts about solar production in the state of Tennessee and also locally.
Yeah.
So speak a little bit about why you think this special election is a real opportunity for Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, I think that given that it's a midterm and sort of the party in power is the Republicans, I think that there's always a pendulum that swings back in a midterm. And this is, while it's a special election, we're mid Trump's term. I think his approval rating is down. I think if Democrats are fired up and ready to go. I think Republicans sort of feel like, oh, we've got our president, we should be okay. I think that there's a real opportunity for the right Democrat to come in, energize the base, and then reach out to the moderates and the independents and disaffected Republicans and put together a winning coalition. We're seeing movement in some of the special elections that we've had, some for Congress, some in, you know, state legislatures across the country in special elections this year, where Democrats are sort of outperforming, you know, where they would have done or where they did in 2024. And so we're picking up percentage points. I think that we have to have the right Democrat out there to do it. We just picked up a seat in Iowa. It's a state Senate seat. There's a special election where, you know, the Democrats are excited. Oh, we've picked up this seat. A Democrat picked up a seat. We flipped it from a Republican. It was a Democratic seat 6 years ago. There was just a Republican there. This seat has been Republican for 40 years. You know, Marshall Blackburn had this seat and a number of others. So it's going to take the right Democrat to come back and get it. You know, Megan Barry had 38% when she ran against Mark Green last year. Odessa Kelly, community organizer out of Nashville, Dynamo, she had 38% when she ran. The pendulum's going to swing back, but we're going to need the right Democrat to get us over the line. I'm not running to come close. I'm not running. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I'm not running to increase my profile. I think that the three Democrats in this race and on the Republican side too, this is sort of a why not election. Why not? You know, I'll put my name in the ring. I'll raise some money. I'll increase my profile. I'll increase my name recognition. And if I lose, I still get to be a state representative, and I just have a bigger donor base and a bigger profile. And, you know, that's going to be good for me politically. I'm not in this for political reasons. This is the only thing that I will ever run for. I promise. Mark my words. And I'm in it because I want to win. I do not want to get close. I'm not in this for a moral victory. If we get 49% and they get 50,
Doesn't work.
It's a failure. And for some people, they might view it as, well, I increased my profile. I got on TV. I raised a bunch of money, made some new friends, and I'll be all the stronger the next time. I'm not doing it for that reason. So I think that I've looked at the numbers. It's absolutely winnable again for the right Democrat.
That's very interesting. Anything else that you would like to tell us today?
No, I'm just excited to be in Robertson County, excited to be here with you all. I really appreciate the opportunity. I put out a piece of mail and we've put it all over social media and our website. because I'm sort of fed up with everything, we've launched a series of in-person town hall meetings in every corner of the district. We are covering all 14 counties. We have 19 scheduled right now. I think we have 20 and 21 locked in. We're going to put those dates up on our website. We published the initial list. We had a critical mass. We'll be in Robertson County on Friday evening, the 5th, at Garner Street Park, where we're going to have a town hall. You go to these functions of the Democratic Party. That's tonight. And I don't know what, are we airing this live, or maybe it's going to be on. So, but I'm excited to get out and meet people face to face. And, you go to these forums, whether it's sponsored by the Democratic Party or the Farm Bureau or anybody else. And it's like, okay, well, Darden, there's so many people running. So everybody gets, 60 seconds for this and 30 seconds for that. Darden, tell us about yourself in 60 seconds. So what's your immigration policy? You have 30 seconds. My wife will tell you, I cannot tell a short story. So I need a minute to get, wound up and going. And so I just said, let's just go, to the town square or the local restaurant or the local hotspot. Let's reserve a space and bring a microphone and let me talk. If you remember Ronnie Reagan in the 80s, or it might have been 78 when he was running for president, he did the same thing in New Hampshire, and some debate moderator, tried to cut him off, and he said, "Mr. Moderator, I paid for this microphone." And so he got to continue talking. And so if I reserve the space and have the microphone, I'm going to take 10, 15 minutes, explain to you who I am, why I'm running, why I think I'm a good fit. And then I'm going to do something radical for a politician. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to take questions, and I want to hear from people. I want to know, what questions do they have for me? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What are their fears? And I'm going to feed everybody. My campaign team thinks that it's really corny, that I'm calling it the Fed Up Tour, and I'm going to get everybody fed up and I'm going to feed you. And they don't like that play on words. It's not very smooth, but, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to be me. I'm not going to run to the left of this and then back to the center and the general. I'm going to be me all the way through. And if people like it, then send me to Congress. And if not, that's okay too. Well, I'll, yeah.
Okay. Well, we thank you for spending some time with us today. We look forward to seeing you at our upcoming town hall.
Yes, sir.
This next Wednesday night. And just to remind folks that town hall is at Innovation Academy, 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September the 10th. Important dates to remember again that we want to emphasize are October the 7th for the primary, and the general election on December 2nd. So everybody, please come out and enjoy our town hall, and also don't forget to vote. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Mr. Copeland, for taking time to come into.
Absolutely.